Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to go through a full PCB design review of this Pico Console V1, which is a fully PCB-based retro gaming console built around the Raspberry Pi Pico. This design was actually sent in by a viewer through my email, which you can find in the description below if you want your own board to be reviewed in a future video. So the idea behind this board is to create a compact handheld style gaming device where everything is integrated directly onto a single PCB. We have a display, tactile buttons for input, onboard power management with battery charging, and even a buzzer for simple sound output. So it's a very clean and minimal hardware design focused on simplicity and integration. So in this video, we're going to break this down from both a schematic and layout perspective and see how well this design is executed. Alright, so let's jump straight into it. So let's start with the schematic. Looking at it, you can definitely tell that a beginner has worked on this design. And again, I don't mean that in a bad way at all, quite the opposite. I actually really like seeing this, because this is exactly how everyone starts. Opening KiCad for the first time, trying to understand how components connect, how to structure a schematic, and then actually turning that into a real design. And the fact that this isn't just a random test circuit, but an actual full system with a display, buttons, power management, and everything integrated, that's honestly really impressive. It shows that the person didn't just follow a tutorial, but actually tried to build something real. Of course, there are going to be things that can be improved, and we'll go through all of that step by step. Things like readability, structure, maybe some best practices, and just general ways to make the design cleaner and easier to work with. But that's completely normal. Nobody gets this perfect from the start. Even when you've been doing this for years, you still look back at your designs and see things you could have done better. So the goal here is not to criticize, but to learn from it. To take a design like this, understand what's already done well, and then build on top of that to make it even better. Because at the end of the day, that's how you improve as a PCB designer. Now, I'm not going to go into full detail and analyze every single component in this schematic. That would take way too long and isn't really the goal of this video. Instead, I'm going to focus more on some general tips and best practices when it comes to schematic design. Things that will make your schematics cleaner, easier to understand, and also easier to work with when you move into the layout. So with that said, let's dive into it. Starting with a more general piece of feedback, always try to begin your design by creating a block diagram or a system architecture of your entire design, and ideally you include that on the very first page of your schematic. This gives a high-level overview of how everything is connected, what the main blocks are, how signals flow through the system, and how different parts interact with each other. Because if someone opens your schematic without any context, they have to figure everything out from scratch. But with a block diagram, they can immediately understand the big picture before diving into the details. And this is not just for others, it also helps you as the designer. It forces you to think through the system before you start placing components, which usually leads to a much cleaner and more structured design. So even if it's something very simple, just a few boxes and arrows, it makes a huge difference in readability and overall design quality. Okay, dissecting the schematic, the first thing that I notice is the ground connections. Right now they are drawn as actual wires going all over the schematic. And this is definitely something you want to avoid, because what happens is that you end up with a lot of unnecessary lines crossing the page, which makes everything look messy and harder to read. Especially as the design grows, this quickly becomes overwhelming. Instead, what you should do is use the ground symbol. Just place a ground symbol on every component that needs to be connected to ground. That way, all those connections are still electrically the same, but visually the schematic becomes much cleaner. You remove a lot of clutter, and it becomes much easier to follow the actual signal paths instead of being distracted by ground wiring everywhere. So this is a very simple change, but it makes a huge difference in readability. Speaking of lines and wire connections, the four-way wire connection is something you do once and then never again. And the reason for that is because it creates a lot of ambiguity. When four wires meet at a single point, it can become very unclear whether all of them are actually connected or if some of them are just crossing over each other. Even if KiCad technically understands the connection, for a human reading the schematic, it's confusing. You have to stop and double check, which slows everything down and increases the chance of mistakes. So instead of doing four-way junctions, it's much better to break them up. Use T-junctions or slightly offset the wires so it's very clear what is connected and what is not. It might seem like a small detail, but these are the kinds of things that make a schematic either easy to read or very frustrating to work with. The same thing goes for signal wires. You actually don't need to draw every single connection across the entire schematic. Doing that just clutters the page and makes it much harder to read. Instead, you should use net labels. So rather than drawing a long wire from point A to point B, you just place the same net label on both ends. This keeps the schematic much cleaner, and it also makes it easier to follow signals without having wires running everywhere across the page. And in just a moment, we'll actually take a look at a redrawn version of this schematic done in my style, where I use net labels to clean everything up and make it much more readable. Next piece of feedback, which is actually somewhat done in this design, is grouping components based on functionality. You can already see that things like the buttons are somewhat grouped together, the battery management is in its own area, and the display has its own section. So the intention is definitely there, which is good, but to take it one step further, I would recommend clearly boxing each functional block. So you draw a rectangle around each section and then include a small piece of text or a title describing what that block is. For example, something like button inputs, power management, display interface, and so on. This makes the schematic much easier to scan. Instead of trying to mentally group things, you can instantly see what each section does. Again, it's a small visual improvement, but it makes a big difference when someone else, or even yourself in the future, is trying to understand the design quickly. Now looking at my redrawing, you can clearly see the difference. I've removed pretty much all the wires, especially the ground wires, and instead used net labels to keep everything clean and easy to follow. And by doing that, the schematic becomes much less cluttered. Instead of having to visually trace wires across the entire page, you can just look at the labels and immediately understand how things are connected. It removes a lot of unnecessary complexity. I also separated each functional block even more clearly and boxed them in with a title for each section. So now instead of one big schematic, it's divided into smaller, well-defined parts. You can instantly see what is power management, what is input, what is display, and so on. And this not only helps someone else reading the schematic, but it also helps you as the designer. Because when you come back to the design later, you don't have to relearn everything. It's already structured in a way that makes sense. And on top of that, I also added a schematic page title, which is something I always recommend doing, especially if you start having multiple pages. It helps keep everything organized and gives a more professional feel to the design. So overall, nothing here changes the functionality at all, but the readability, clarity, and usability of the schematic is massively improved, and that becomes more and more important as your designs grow in complexity. Now let's go through some more technical feedback, starting with this run pin for the MCU. This pin is essentially the reset pin and it's active low, meaning that if this pin is pulled to ground, the system will reset, and in this case I would not leave this pin floating. Now sure, it might already have a pull-up on the MCU module itself, but I still wouldn't rely on that. It's always better to define that behavior explicitly in your own design. So what I would recommend is to add an external pull-up resistor, something like 10K or 47K to VCC, and optionally you can also add a push button to ground so you can manually reset the system when needed. If we look at my redrawing, I simply added a pull-up resistor there. It's a small addition, but it makes the design more robust and predictable. Moving on, I also noticed that there were no decoupling capacitors on the board, and this is something I would definitely add. As a general rule of thumb, you want at least a 100 nanofarad capacitor on each VCC pin. This includes things like the battery management module, the display, and also near the connector for the MCU module. So if we look at the redrawing, that's exactly what I did. I added a decoupling capacitor close to each of these power pins. And the reason for this is to filter out high frequency noise on the power rail. These capacitors act as a local energy reservoir, meaning they can supply quick bursts of current directly to the component when needed. Without them, the power has to travel a longer distance through the PCB, which increases impedance and makes the system more susceptible to noise and instability. So again, a very small addition, but absolutely essential for a stable and reliable design. Moving on to the buttons, now there is inherently nothing wrong with wiring buttons like this, but it's not the most robust solution. In this configuration, where the buttons are directly connected to the GPIO pins and nothing else, it can become quite noisy and unreliable, because this setup assumes that the MCU has internal pull-up resistors enabled, and while some MCUs do have internal pull-ups, not all of them do. And even when they exist, they can be relatively weak or not ideal for all situations. Some MCUs also use open drain configurations, which means you absolutely need an external pull-up for the signal to work properly. So what I would recommend is to always include external pull-up resistors. And if we look at my redrawing, that's exactly what I did. I added a pull-up resistor to each button. Even if the MCU already has internal pull-ups, it doesn't hurt to have external ones. It just makes the design more stable, less sensitive to noise, and more predictable overall. Another thing that I like to implement when working with buttons is debounce circuitry. Now this can be handled in software, and a lot of times it is, but the most robust way to do it is actually in hardware. So what is debounce? When you press a button, it doesn't create a clean transition from low to high or high to low. Instead, the mechanical contacts inside the button physically bounce for a very short period of time, and during that bouncing, the signal can rapidly switch between high and low multiple times. So instead of a single clean press, the MCU might interpret it as multiple presses, and that's where the problem comes in, because this can lead to incorrect behavior, like multiple button triggers when you only pressed it once. So one way to fix this is by using an RC filter. This is simply a resistor and a capacitor placed in a way that smooths out the signal. What it does is filter out those high frequency transitions caused by the bouncing. So instead of seeing all those rapid changes, the MCU sees a much cleaner and slower transition, which effectively removes the unwanted switching and gives you a stable, reliable button press. So again, you can do this in software, but adding a simple RC filter in hardware makes the system much more robust and less prone to errors. And lastly, looking at the original design, I also noticed that no ERC markers are used for unused pins. This is something that's very easy to miss, especially when you're starting out. Even experienced designers forget this sometimes, but luckily this is something the electrical rule checker will usually flag for you. So it's a very easy thing to catch and fix. The reason we use no ERC markers is to tell the tool that a pin is intentionally left unconnected. Otherwise, it will assume it's a mistake and throw warnings or errors. So if we look at the redrawing, you can see that I've placed no ERC markers on each unused pin, just to clearly indicate that this is done on purpose and to keep the design clean when running checks. So that's it for the schematic review. Overall, a really nice first design with a lot of good ideas and just a few things that can make it cleaner, more robust, and easier to work with moving forward. In the next video, we're going to go through the layout of this board and take a closer look at things like component placement, routing, and overall structure. If you enjoyed this type of PCB design review, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, where we break down real designs and talk through both the good and the things that can be improved. And if you want your own board to be reviewed in a future video, you can send your design to my email, which will be in the description below, or join my school community. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.